There's a voice inside your head that you've ignored for years. It whispers in moments of silence, screams in moments of chaos, but you've been trained to dismiss it as nonsense. You scroll past it, you distract yourself, you medicate it with noise. But what if I told you that voice isn't just your subconscious? What if it's something much greater, something divine? Carl Jung believed that God doesn't speak from the clouds above. He speaks from the deepest parts of your own mind, and the more you ignore him, the louder your suffering becomes. This isn't religion. This is psychology, shadow and synchronicity. This is ancient, primal, eternal. And the truth is, God is using your mind to speak to you, and you've been silencing him. Today, you learn to listen. Text on screen, watch until the end, your soul might depend on it. Carl Jung didn't preach religion, but he knew there was something sacred in the architecture of the mind. He once said, bidden or unbidden, God is present. Not outside you, but in you. Buried beneath your habits, your traumas, your identity, there's a voice that doesn't belong to your ego. It's deeper than logic. It's the architect behind your dreams, your intuition, your symbols. Jung called this the self, the totality of who you are, and more. And it's through the self that God whispers. You're not broken. You're just disconnected from that inner voice. You've mistaken fear for instinct, trauma for logic, and silence for absence. But silence isn't absence. Silence is sacred space, and within that space, God is patiently waiting to be heard. Through symbols, through dreams, through the very patterns in your life you keep calling coincidence. But they're not coincidences. They're divine fingerprints on the walls of your subconscious. You've been taught to fear the unconscious, to label it dark, irrational, or broken. But Jung saw the unconscious differently. He called it the divine well, the part of your mind where God plants seeds. Every dream you brush off, every sudden fear you ignore, every recurring symbol, number, animal, or name you keep seeing, they're not random. They are messages from your higher self, from the collective unconscious, from something sacred that lives behind your eyes. Jung believed this. Your conscious mind is the surface, but your unconscious is the ocean. And sometimes what feels like a storm in your life isn't destruction, it's divine disruption. Because you stopped listening. You were born with a sacred antenna, and that antenna is your unconscious. It connects you to Source, to God, to the mind behind all minds. The question is, are you brave enough to dive in, to interpret the dream, to decode the pattern? Or will you keep running, pretending it's all random? If this is stirring something ancient in you, comment "I am my own oracle" and say it out loud. Because the first step to decoding God's message is trusting you were born with the map. Have you ever thought of someone and they called you seconds later? Or seen the same number again and again on receipts, clocks, license plates, and felt like the universe was nudging you? That is synchronicity. And it's not luck, not chance, not coincidence. Jung called synchronicity a meaningful coincidence. Events connected not by cause, but by meaning. It's how God arranges reality like a mirror. So what's going on inside you starts showing up outside you. Your heartbreak echoes in songs, your desire shows up in strangers, your fear takes form in obstacles, because your outer world is the echo of your inner world. The law of attraction knows this. Jung knew this. Mystics knew this. Synchronicity is how the divine leaves breadcrumbs, not loud, not obvious, but precise, chillingly precise. When you align with your true path, the world begins to align with you. Doors open, messages appear, life stops being random and starts becoming divinely choreographed. The voice of God doesn't always speak in thunder. Sometimes it whispers in repeated numbers, or the right words at the right time, or a stranger's passing glance that feels like prophecy, calmly and with impact. The next time life gives you a sign, don't call it a fluke. Call it what it is, God's handwriting. If you've ever felt numb, disconnected, like a stranger in your own life, it's not because you're broken. It's because you've been programmed that way. Society doesn't want you to listen to the voice within. It wants you obedient, distracted, dependent. It teaches you to worship the external, status, beauty, likes, money. But God lives inside. And that makes you dangerous. You were born with intuition, but they told you it was just imagination. You were born with inner knowing, but they laughed and called it nonsense. You were born hearing the sacred voice, but they filled your ears with noise. This is dark psychology. Not the kind you see in books, the kind that happens silently, through school systems, social media, generational trauma. It teaches you to distrust your soul, to silence your gut, to fear your dreams, and most importantly, to believe that God is far away. Why? Because if you truly knew that the divine lives inside you, you wouldn't be so easy to control. You'd question more, obey less, and live with a power they can't monetize. So they numb you, with endless scrolling, with fear-based media, with pills, porn, perfectionism, anything to keep you distracted from the voice within. But today, you remember, the voice is still there, waiting. Spoken text. You've heard about the law of attraction. Thoughts become things. Energy attracts energy. But what they didn't tell you is that this law isn't just mechanical. It's divine. It's not just your thoughts that attract. It's your frequency, your unresolved wounds, your hidden desires, your soul's blueprint. Jung believed that your unconscious influences your reality. So when you suppress it, you create chaos. But when you integrate it, you create miracles. Your outer world is a living mirror. It reflects what you're ready to see. When you ignore the divine voice within, life screams at you through pain. But when you align with that voice, life flows, synchronicity increases, and suddenly things just click. This is the feedback loop. Your soul speaks. The world responds. You listen, and the cycle continues, upward or downward, based on your awareness. You're not a victim of reality. You're a co-creator with the divine. This is why you must listen, because when God speaks through your inner world, the outer world rearranges itself to follow. Comment I align, I attract. Say it with power. Let it be more than words. Let it be a contract with the sacred. There is a part of you that you've buried, the part that's angry, jealous, addicted, the part that feels shame, guilt, and rage. Society told you to hide it. Religion told you to fear it. But Carl Jung, he told you to face it. Because in the darkness you avoid, God is waiting. Jung called it the shadow, the rejected self, the disowned parts of you that still live beneath the surface. And here's the twist. The shadow is not your enemy. It's the guardian of your power. Every time you reject your emotions, you reject the divine message behind them. Your anger holds a boundary. Your sadness holds a lesson. Your fear is a warning or a doorway. God doesn't just live in the light. He hides in your darkest rooms to see if you'll have the courage to open the door. That anxiety you feel, that addiction, that recurring emotion that won't go away, it's not random. It's not weakness. It's a message coded in pain. Pain is the divine knocking. When you finally face it, you don't just heal. You transform, you integrate, you rise, whole. Shadow work is not just psychological, it is spiritual warfare. You versus the parts of you that have forgotten their divine. Slow down. Deeply resonant voice isn't always gentle. Sometimes it's disguised as your biggest breakdown. But that breakdown is the voice saying, "Come meet me in the dark." Every night when you sleep, God speaks. But we've been trained to forget, to wake up and scroll, to ignore the symbols, to call it all just a dream. Carl Jung didn't see dreams as nonsense. He saw them as sacred telegrams from the divine part of your mind sent in code. A snake biting your hand? A house on fire? A child you've never met crying in your arms? These aren't hallucinations. They're archetypes, symbols, messages. Jung believed that dreams are where the self speaks freely. No ego, no censorship, just truth. Raw, symbolic truth. Dreams are how the divine bypasses your conditioning, your beliefs, your logic, because symbols don't lie. And dreams don't ask permission. Some of your dreams are warnings, some are invitations, and some are prophecies of who you're becoming. If you've ever had a dream that shook you, that haunted you for days, it wasn't random. It was a summons. The only question is, did you listen? Start a dream journal. Pray before sleep. Ask your soul to speak clearly, and when it does, write it down. Decode it, live it, honor it, because when your dreams speak, God is using your own imagination to deliver truth. Most people live their whole lives without ever hearing the divine voice, not because it isn't speaking, but because they were never taught how to listen. They ignore their gut, they suppress their dreams, they drown their intuition in noise, routine, and fake smiles, because listening means confronting what's broken. Jung said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And it's true. That's why most people stay asleep. They call pain bad luck. They call synchronicity coincidence. They call the voice inside crazy. But not you. You're here. You're listening. And that alone makes you rare. Because waking up means you stop blaming. You start decoding. You stop fearing your darkness. You start integrating it. You realize every pattern in your life, good or bad, was a message. Every toxic relationship, a mirror. Every delay and breakdown, a signal. Every dream, voice, hunch, and déjà vu, a whisper from the divine. But you only hear it when you become quiet enough and honest enough to admit the truth. God has been speaking to you through your own mind all along. And now, you're ready to answer back. Punawis. If you've come this far, comment, I remember who I am. Say it twice, out loud, because remembering is how you begin. You were never disconnected, only distracted. You were never abandoned, only asleep. That voice inside of you, the whisper in your dreams, the signs you kept seeing, the patterns you couldn't ignore, they were never random. They were divine. Carl Jung knew God doesn't speak through lightning bolts or golden scrolls. He speaks through your subconscious, through symbols, shadows, silence. He speaks when you break down. He speaks when you can't fake it anymore. He speaks in the moment you finally ask, is there more to this life than what I see? And now you know, yes, there is, and it's been inside you all along. The rational past isn't here to entertain you. It's here to wake you up, to reconnect you to the divine spark within, to remind you you are not just a body, not just a name. You are a portal between the divine and the real. And if God is using your mind to speak, then it's time you spoke back. Not through words, but through action, through honesty, through courage. Tonight, before you sleep, silence your mind. Ask the divine, what do you want me to hear? And then listen, because your life isn't random. Your wounds aren't meaningless. Your intuition isn't fake. God is speaking, and now you're listening. Final text on screen. Share this with someone who needs to hear the voice inside. Fade out slowly with heartbeat and ambient echoes.